It's sent.
I'm good.
I haven't gotten it yet.
Oh, did I? Sorry, let me resend that. Okay, you should have it.
I'm ready.
Cool. Context: the People's Republic of China to ban lethal autonomous weapons, advanced arms racing. What is that? Submarine warfare cause U.S.-China war picks on solving the perception capability cause escalation. Johnson 20 UVs USC support of AI can be deployed to saturate enemies' defense, destroy nuclear submarines, advanced no sensing enabled drone source, locate sensory drone concentrate autonomously. The state views credit survival nuke service and drone swarms destabilize at a strategic level in war swarms are not intended or capable of disarming perception load, destabilize the speed of it, put defender disadvantage, creating incentives to strike first at superior rivals. AWS offers states attractive option to bolt project power than contested zone. China's unmanned drones and impede U.S. phone ops. China to infuse cruise missile hypersonics with autonomy close range counters. Taiwan's right ENS has more accident prone, destabilizing China, deploying UVs to bolster anti-submarine capabilities to challenge undersea primacy. Two is that U.S.-China war becomes certainty with autonomous hypersonics. First strike postures, miscalculation, ambiguity. The Johnson 20 in future conflict between U.S. and China sets one of a strong incentive to attack through INS or preemptively. Chinese analysts view hypersonics as an effective means to enhance deterrence, penetrate, use missile defensive maneuverability. Hypersonics compatible these dynamics on predictable trajectories, make using this weapon as escalatory, use it to lose the situation, fear of surprise attack, heightened miscalculation. AI to accelerate progress for hypersonics and precision munitions. Hypersonic vehicles because their high velocity cannot be operated manually. Augmentation enables swarms of hypersonic autonomous systems to circumvent technical challenges and targeting mobile missile forces. King of preemptive attack. Chinese analysts anticipate the AI will resolve the issues associated with vehicles, including flight environments and non-linearity, time variance, and uncertainty during the dive phase. Chinese efforts to apply AI machine learning to enhance hypersonics and be understood as developing intelligent autonomous weapons intersection with AI, enhance hypersonics with nuclear security, penetration, abuse of missile defenses, disruption comes in undermine nuclear deterrence, increase brinksmanship, and stem attack preemptively. And three, settle ban on law solves since Johnson 18. China's view qualms about deploying laws the U.S. will be much more constrained. Pentagon's reticence is grounded liberal democratic norms propelled by rapid attack trends and aggressive pursuit by rival powers. Chinese U.S.'s commitment to keeping humans in charge could waver the trajectory. Whole China will challenge the U.S. to lead that is likely to accelerate Pentagon efforts to innovate office any initiatives and make it harder to keep this disruptive arms race in check. And four is that AI and nuclear capabilities causes escalate guarantees renewed aggression, nuclear excellence, and escalation with USS J-20. The Chinese have been long concerned with about false negatives from early warning result in failures to detect nuclear attack vectors. Are the Chinese perception of U.S. nuclear posture and assumption of U.S. intentions use of AI and autonomy for nuclear offensive defense could be taken on destabilizing qualities prospective U.S. resuming a forward deployed tactical nuclear posture exacerbates of the circlement autonomous tech operation. The potential to respond to such a posture, China could deploy swarms to track and intercept U.S. capable platforms that goes racing could develop PLA's deployment of advanced AI enabled or warrant systems and automation launch of fire missiles and intensify U.S. concerns about false positives, nuclear war caused by accidental fire false detection. Five is that China's advances in laws cause power wars. The current transition of power to China's peaceful laws make conflict driven. Why 20 the development of military innovation with capacity disrupting these conflict allows the rising stage to offset traditional power projection, which increasing stability has historically been enabled hegemonic conflict challenged by deterioration of advantage dominance is prompted to improve innovation and generate regional stability. Precipitate hegemonic wars. The dominant power rest finally the transition U.S. fears to losing the race to develop. AWS will allow pure military stability, conventional military strength, undermining power projection, essential to the hegemony. Chinese military technology is gaining on the U.S. and this disruptive nature of autonomous tech will allow the PLA to offset U.S. conventional superiority. China believes in the new revolution in military affairs, beginning capitalize on autonomous systems to improve their military. Chinese doctrine ensures the importance of gaining superiority in domains of emerging rivalry modernization, guided by the recognition that the conflict will turn on PLA's capacity to counter traditional power projection. All laws offer a pathway to overtaking U.S. military cause a strategy called the leapfrog strategy. And six, that AWS shreds the escalation measures between the U.S. and China will inevitably inadvertently miscalculate that's lays 18 tension between the U.S. and China. Reps the autonomous U.S. UCAB identifies autonomous Chinese Air defense engages U.S. and China disarray communication. C2, U.S. orders autonomous attack submersibles to sink any plan they encounter. 2 weeks later, ceasefires broken during negotiation. One submersible sinks the plane. Cruiser China breaks down negotiations. Scenario combines concerns of AI preemption, non-overhaulable drones, AWS make probable decisions that can miscalculate. Each side deploys AWS may misinterpret the actions or reaction in unpredictable ways. Uncertainty clouding initial engagement pre-stages further violence. While effective coercive bargaining requires credible assurances. AWS deploys so effective operating theaters where A2AD has degraded. C2 they continue to wreak havoc, making it impossible to incredibly de-escalate. 7 that war goes nuclear. Use of elusive pressure cause Chinese first strike. The slogan 918 Chinese nuclear expansion and ease technical constraints shift to a more alerted posture. Experts have warned that entanglement of China's conventional nuclear force could introduce escalation risk. Strikes against China's conventional capabilities might inadvertently degrade Beijing's nuclear deterrent efforts to track and locate and track it being misinterpreted as preparations for disarming. Striking entanglement could increase pressures to using nuclear weapons. Opacity about its nuclear force could lead each side to misjudge its action. Chinese military attacks to describe potentially escalatory signaling for demonstrating resolving launching ICBM. China's NFU can change. And 8 is that nuclear war causes extinction. Edward 17 of the climax effects of nuclear war theater from view. The climate scientists use a measure proven all 100,000 nuclear weapons might be launched at temperatures drop 12 degrees less than during the ice age. Smoke would inhibit photosynthesis, causing crop failures, famine, ecological destruction. Effect would be similar. Giant meteor responsible to the extinction of dinosaurs would be the dinosaurs reflex impulse for their fear. Checks like unlikely exchange would stay limited. Framework. The standards maximize expected well-being. Sink outweighs future generations. Proper 15 reduces the extra risk of most more of their children's upon trillions of future people. Even well-being given 0% so 1% would not consequential. Some not view that the latter to a minimally possible version of beyond virtue ethics must concern promote the goods less strong reasons to reduce existential risk. Even then, essentially they have reason for moral uncertainty to reduce existential risk. Consequences are critical. Disregarding foreseeable harm reifies structures of domination. McCluskey 12 by making inequalities appear beyond the law. The unintended consequences of message and narrows the protection against racial harm powers is being able to act without having to take harm to others into account. The effects of policy are foreseeable, not accidental. Just requires attention. Intended complex effects of the unintended consequences. Inverts justice promotes a supposedly moral message. The guys of critique legal scholars and advocates should scrutinize power. Realism is true. Centuries of empirics. That's Fisher and tab 17. The rules never change. Only short-term incentives. Ruthless power politics still drives the international system. Teaches the steals allows when systems unless these days European geography made wars more appealing. The powers extend their competition beyond Europe, launching wars of colonial conquest in 1945 and to colonialism. The United States and the Soviet Union locked into a bipolar system. For instance, Britain had to cooperate to survive European rivalries, and because their incentives changed to the superpowers, other ways to compete, committing acts of war in battleground states like Vietnam, Afghanistan, Argentina. Reminds the idea that war ran out of fashion. Israeli air force and the Pakistan wars of the international community intervened to hold a war like Yugoslavia or Kuwait. This just means that great powers push their desired outcome more. Those great powers disagree, like in Syria, they make things a good deal worse when worse than the interest they pursue. Russia and Ukraine, U.S. and Iraq. It's great power politics, and even if realism is problematic, it's theoretically useful in understanding IR Abraham 17, the response to deemed realism and its complex manifestation is unethical and fundamentally racist. Imperial project failure does not delegitimize realist insight that realism circuits or halls of power should be reason not to reject, but to leverage to authorize. As we can talk about imperialism all day, talk about anarchy and self-interest motive that refuse comparison, strikes and note of analytic reducing realism only obscures complexity, reproducing narrative that some authorize use to authorize unethical programs, unproductive sources, impose realist categories of anarchy, self-interest. The problem to confront. Mark had a problem to confront.
Ready?
Yep.
Can you describe what the submarine internal link looks like?
Sure. So our Johnson evidence indicates that new kind of autonomous weapons threat can basically, like drone swarms, can be used to threaten submarines and through choke points and basically trail them. And because of that, it calls into question the survivability of China or the America's second strike nuclear capabilities.
So it's about them being able to detect subs.
Well, I'm not sure about, so the evidence does talk about mobile sensing, but it also allows them in general to saturate their defenses. So it also negates things like A2AD, for example, which our evidence talks about in the context of the South China Sea. But
sure,
yeah.
The Johnson hypersonics. What about hypersonics is unique? How do they change deterrence?
How do they change deterrence? So our evidence
like
indicates
what?
that,
Yeah, what about hypersonics is unique, and how does that lead to conflict?
Cool. So they're destabilizing for a couple of reasons. Our evidence indicates that they move extremely fast, which makes it they move really fast, and because of that, their trajectories can't be predicted at all, which means that it's more likely to cause escalation. It increases because they're so fast. They undermine the ability of a stable second strike, which creates a use it or lose it situation. All of that makes miscalc more likely, which creates structural escalatory dynamics.
Okay. Can we talk about what the plan looks like, how it's enforced? What does that? Yeah. What does it look like?
Sure. So I'm not sure what you mean by how it's enforced. We would say that China bans their lethal autonomous weapons. Like, I'm not sure. What you want
does like development of laws still continue post plan? Do you prevent development of them?
I don't like the. We defend just the plan text that they ought to ban lethal autonomous.
So you're not going to
weapons.
specify anything past the plan text.
We don't specify beyond the plan text.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about this Jiang evidence. It says Let me find the quote. Quote, China's use of AI and autonomy for nuclear offense and defense could take on destabilizing qualities. Does the affirmative affect AI in nuclear offense and defense?
Right. So then it goes on to talk about autonomy. It says that autonomy structurally increases the risk of nuclear accidents, which is what we solve.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
I
but
think,
obviously then like AI and like automation is an alt cause to that your evidence literally says
well,
could
no, we
cause
would say
conflict.
autonomous. I mean, if your alt cause is like the word AI in our evidence, then like be my guest. But
Well,
our
it's
evidence
more
is
about
pretty
like
clear about
nuclear offense
autonomous
and
weapons.
defense. It seems like you need to resolve both.
So our evidence talks specifically about the ability of autonomous tech to disrupt U.S. nuclear defense. Like, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, because the autonomous weapons threaten nuclear offense and defense capabilities as well.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's fine. I'll send the doc.
How many sheets?
3 off case. Case goes solvency, or I guess there's not really a solvency page, so maybe float on framework, but the solvency page and then top down the internal links. Okay, let me know when you're ready.
Give me a second, downloading.
Okay, is everyone good?
It's nearly open. Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. Can you mute Akshay? Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. First topic is the counterplan tech. The People's Republic of China should establish regulations for lethal autonomous weapons modeled on the amended protocol for landmines, including establishing specific technical limits for laws, including baseline requirements for sensory or computational ability and shut-off capabilities, restrictions on the deployment of FAWs in densely populated areas, providing rules to govern accountability, require residual human control, and require states to train commanders in the legitimate use of FAWs to ensure compliance. It competes. Regulation and bans are distinct. There is no possibility of development with a plan, and if they try to shift out of this, then that obviously means they solve 0% of the case. That solves Lewis 15. ILA already regulates weapons that share similarities with FAWs, landmines, FAWs features, or create opportunities to supply specific rules regarding how weapons can be designed. The amended protocol grapples with the same normative challenges and provides a particularly apt model for regulation of FAWs. The International Committee should develop an instrument for FAWs and now look at the amended protocol for landmines. Characteristics of the FAW include technical details such as quality of camera and FAWs, the ability to make difficult contextual assessments of intention or behavior. Deployment of FAWs in densely populated areas should be illegal characteristics of the opposing force level of residual human control, weather conditions, or ordnance strength, providing rules to govern accountability to ensure compliance. State should train commanders the legitimate use of FAWs and counterplan cells. Regulations will prevent cheating and encourage buy-in and spill over to eventual full bans, but an attempt at a full ban initially causes cheating and lack of compliance that got CF Lewis 15. FAWs are highly amenable to regulation. Critics are wrong to think that prohibition will avert harms rather than prohibiting FAWs. ILA should recognize they may be permissibly used. Ambiguity hinders effective compliance. Accountability, defining permissible context, and more precise regulation can minimize these concerns. An ideal regulatory scheme would be international, provide specificity regarding how systems may be used, including research, testing, and development. And prolific states are more likely to comply with regulations. Not clear, the ban would be effective. ILAs will represent the biggest advance since gunpowder. Unrealistic to expect major world powers to ban even a ban or successful nation that interpret the ban narrowly to prohibit further development or violate the prohibition in ways that safety detection. The better approach to ensure compliance would be to establish minimum limitations and specific rules that how it should be the Oslo Convention. Established nations are unlikely to accept a full ban. A more modest attempt to regulate these weapons may result in higher bind. Counterplan spills up results in a treaty after the disablinks are no longer relevant. In Lewis 15, if FAWs revolutionize war, the states may develop them regardless of cause. May work the other way. South norms can ripen into hard treaties. If a ban turns out to be necessary, may be easier to build on existing set of regulations to norms rather than agree one from scratch. Next off is the said Chinese legitimacy fragile but intact now. Military power projection is key. Mishra 327. China's hyper-aggression aimed at domestic legitimacy with CCP. China's diplomacy has been uncompromising. China become insecure to the rapidly changing global movements. The screen needs experience. It is forcing it to become hyper-aggressive. The objective of the authorities to convince the Chinese population that the West is opposed to when the only recourse is the party to strengthen the legitimacy of the political system. The plan erodes CCP legitimacy. Xi and CCP leadership have made laws their top priority for military and economic superiority. Ellen et al. 19 China's State Councils requires AI strategic and technology new focus to use speech demonstrate that China's leadership continues to subscribe to the AI that China should pursue global leadership in AI. Tech leaders believe lethal autonomous weapons using AI will be the basis of military power. CCP instability causes Korean War, goes nuclear. Perkinson 12 the stability of Korean Peninsula rests on the stability of China's political system. NOCO relies on China's superseding sanctions for basic needs. 83% of trade China has been handling tensions with the Korean Peninsula. South Korea rely on China's deterrence of North Korean aggression to the Chinese government. Undergoing stability may be nuclear conflict between North and South Korea. Next off, effective cyber attacks on CNC coming now causes inadvertent and accidental escalation. Johnson and Krebel 20 linkages between cyberspace and impact security of nuclear systems. Augmented offensive cyber kills will exacerbate military escalation risks, especially inadvertent and accidental escalation, increasing vulnerability of nuclear control systems. Cyber attacks might erode the survivability of states, nuclear forces, physical systems are vulnerable. Cyber attacks and in conjunction with cyber offense enabling sophisticated cyber attacks on a larger scale of faster speeds with greater anonymity enable low skilled attackers to penetrate defense area gap. Nuclear power subs considered secure when submerged become vulnerable to low cost automated cyber attacks. Weaponized warfare cause unpredictable errors. Lost stops effective cyber and physical attacks on CNC and preserves deterrence. Harvard-Westlake 19 automation could enhance defenses physical cyber attacks against nukes. CNC delivery and support system enhancing deterrence and fortifying stability, bolster resilience of vulnerable NC2 networks, enable autonomously self-healing networks in physical or cyber space in response to generic kinetic attacks. And CNC nodes sustaining situational awareness and CNC enhancing deterrence. Their author agrees laws debates should include cyber Wyatt 19 lethal use of AWS is the most comfortable potential use and destruction of rapid progress. Lethal autonomous system will depend on purpose of deployment and intent will more important to the weapons nature legally refers physically to cyber warfare, especially true given this quote from 1AC Jing, either they link or they cancel those cross-X makes Chinese first strike high risk in the short term. Johnston Crumble 20 it is unclear whether adversity intends to protect until a prepare for an offensive attack. Cyber offensive defense will come out of fear of preemptive striking, increased first mover, and send Chinese stylist view vulnerabilities. China's NC3 to cyber as a national security threat, straight about affecting its capability in cars of conflict would reduce both sides risk calls increase incentive to strike preemptively. Disat is much faster. Hackers will acquire laws fast, but state actors will take years. Top 18 risk of disastrous use of laws by non-state actors far greater than misuse by state actors. Fully AWS under development are a long way from integration because professional state militaries need predictable reliability from malicious actor reliability. That's pressing case. China circumvents one is legal loopholes. Kenya 20 China's not the same eager to tie its own hands when it comes to the research of AWS as Chinese proclamation of contradicting intentions. The definition for the delegation provided was convoluted enough to exclude the types of weapons the healer are developing. China's approach legal warfare seeking to exploit legal actions to constrain and illegitimize adversaries. 2 is industry incentives and tech advantage. Mohanty 17 China solved its business and called for responsible use of laws. Also saw sovereignty and territorial integrity. China does not want to be not a technological asymmetry is guided by so ambitions and confidence being a step ahead of other autonomous weapons. China aerospace industry developing cruise missiles. Private sector developing autonomous robots widely deployed in war. 3 strategic island manipulation. Chan 19 China joined 28 other states with support for prohibiting fully autonomous weapons by Beijing clarified just against the use on the battlefield development or production. They're simultaneously working on the technology trying to use international laws limit against our competitors Chinese US. You have 2 sides to worry about the other gaining an advantage. This means you should assign zero risk to solvency. Don't check it on try or die when we are the only ones with comparative evidence about China's intentions. Don't let them wish away circumvention with Bolivia references to durable fiat. Our interpretation is that durable fiat means the plan that's passed and goes into effect, but they don't get to fiat perfect enforcement. Any other interpretation artificially inflates the F and crushes negative ground, also destroys research and clash by avoiding the best part of debate, which is case. This doesn't make it impossible to be after, just requires them to cut a better enforcement mechanism. It's on you for not reading solvency. Subs. No subs impact Horowitz 19. Complexity of SW mission to detect SSPs first are overstated. Processing take days to transport ocean overstate the ability of low-cost UVs coming up with the inherent physics-based difficulties sensing and undersea mean limited detection of red UVs, limited deterrence because of power sources solution lack sufficient speed and power assets needed to render even a portion of ocean are so really likely to be enormous. Skip next card hypersonics or exaggerated tracing and right 20. The hypersonic reveal skippers are limited heating yielding IR sync sufficient for detection by existing sensors. Results counting question of dangers of hypersonic weapons. Hypersonic evolution, not revolutionary developments. Erroneous beliefs can be traced by DoD officials. Also, Russia development of hypersonics makes their impact inevitable. We read Green Johnson 20. Chinese, U.S. and Russian doctrinal tests to share common view of utility of hypersonic weapons. The future conflict between U.S. or Russia sides will have strong incentive to attack preemptively. If China's early work to detect a hypersonic equivalent for the U.S. Beijing want to be sure whether China was intended or just reading inadvertent escalatory risks. Several states, notably Russia, are developing AGV. Next, the Jing evidence. Alt causes to arms racing. Their Jing evidence is about Chinese AI in general, not just laws. Read the text of the card. It's short, unwarranted, vague, and bad. Who gets nukes? How? Why is AI unique in the context of Chinese nuclear and conventional modernization? Wide evidence. China's rise will be peaceful. Shifts in 19. Chinese behavior is limited to circumstance. China's not increase the rate of its military spending. Its economy gets growing deployments only. Military previously claimed China's expanded military crime strategy claims to much as resolving existing disputes and news to evict the U.S. from East Asian competitive developments and a newly country India faces strong incentive forward, proving the U.S. overly aggressive activity cord over the PRC might lose Chinese leaders of good reason to park in the slow campaign limited protection avert, which the name of China's highly rational game. China's decision to appoint coordinated competition while physically stability is hardly evidence that China focuses on hand-to-hand competition. Lays evidence of lethal autonomous weapons proliferates de-escalatory and prevents nuclear war. Umbrella 20 call low cost make them more expendable. Strike with greater precision, largely capable of becoming moral actors and find out beyond this desirable given laws will not extend war efforts. Emotional volatility could lead to death, friend, or high precision weaponry where perform destructive weapons could reduce harm. Ease of use could prevent conflict, providing credible retaliation. Laws could accelerate nuclear disarmament. Laws could provide winter safe deterrence. Laws could render the world's nuclear arsenals irrelevant.
Okay. Good for cross-X.
Yeah.
Status of the counterplan.
Conditional.
Okay. Let's talk about some of these planks. So what does residual human control mean?
It's described in the evidence. Let me find the lines.
And what makes that different from meaningful human control?
Yeah, so the difference is residual human control is like an operator gets to determine how FAWs or lethal autonomous weapons are used prior to like the actual event. So it doesn't make them suddenly not autonomous because during the actual like engagement, they're like completely on their own. It's just like a question of how they determine when they're used.
Wait, so they determine when they're deployed? Like, how is that distinct from the status quo?
In the status quo, there's like much less control. The counterplan establishes harsher regulations.
Okay. But so that still limits like who they can target then.
Limits? I have no idea what that like. What is that asking?
That's fine. Let's talk about this disad. What about laws is like law? Is this about cyber defenses?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Well, okay, whoa. It's not just about cyber defenses. It's about the usage of AI in nuclear command and control infrastructure, which is the entirety of your Jing evidence.
Okay. Well, no, it talks about enhancing defenses against
Yeah,
hacking
I read
and
a
stuff.
quote in CrossX, quote, China's use of AI and autonomy for nuclear offense and defense could take
Right,
on
but why does that
destabilizing
mean it's a
qualities.
law? Like, I guess just this Wyatt card you read, like this says.
Oh yeah, the Wyatt card says that questions of cyber warfare, both offensively and defensively, are important and should be included in the laws debate.
I don't see how this says defense is included. It says intention matters,
It's a
but that's
question of
vague.
what we define laws to be. Obviously, if you just say like lethal autonomous weapons are only things that ever affect humans and are used offensively, the Wyatt evidence would disagree with you.
Okay. I guess this card, also this Horowitz card says automation can enable it. Why is that mutually exclusive with banning fully autonomous?
Once again, this is like a question of the link debate that I've already like you've read a bunch of lines that either establish alt causes or means that the disad doesn't like. If the disad doesn't like, the case has zero chance of solvency because every single one of your cards is in the context of this alt cause.
I wouldn't say that's true. Let's talk about the Russia stuff. What card says that Russia develops laws now?
Wait, on case?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have evidence that says Russia's developing hypersonics in the status quo, which is sufficient.
Is that the recutting?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this card is like a future conflict with Russia. Like, where is it?
I'm reading your own evidence. Like, you can't.
No, I know, and I'm questioning
Okay.
the recutting. That's fine. Who hacks?
In the cyber disad, non-state actors could also be states, I guess, but probably non-state actors.
What Ev says they have capabilities.
Chertoff.
25 left. I'll send it out. Wait, am I muted? No, I'm not. I'll send it out. So y'all should have it. Is everyone good for an order?
I haven't gotten the doc yet, but I'm good for an order.
I can try resetting it, but the order is just going to be like case top down in the order of like the one and C. Then the counter plan, the second disad, then the first disad. How about now? If it doesn't come in a minute, we could use like the file share or something.
I just got it.
Okay, let me know when you're good.
Give me 1 second. Okay, I am ready.
Okay, judges. Tage, are you good?
1 sec, the doc is opening. Cool, I'm good.
Okay. Going for subsidiary Johnson evidence indicates the development of drone sword fight. China threatens second strike capability, cause escalation with the United States. That goes nuclear. They consider Logan evidence as that causes nuclear war, which is the most likely scenario out of the limelight. They circumvention. One is that we get durable fiat. It's most fair. Otherwise, they can read our uniqueness evidence back at us. Is the reason why China would not enforce it, which kills any negative grounded, affirmative grounded. Link turns their negative ground argument because it kills any clash or engagement. And you should prefer Afghan over neg ground because the neg all has a ton of generics like reform case, etc. But there's no, but if there's nothing, the Af gets hosed. There's no legitimacy for topic for claims about topic literature. Their argument of no perfect enforcement does not make sense. If it's a domestic topic, it's the same as if they read circumvention like Trump rolls back federal jobs narrative. You should apply that logic on a domestic topic. The line below, they say that also it doesn't solve our incentives argument. Or Johnson evidence was or ANC evidence says that it results in incentives for the arms race, which also independently solves illegal loopholes. This is we don't defend that definition of ban by China, and it's international, which is not our method. They say industry dual use does not take out our argument. There's no reason why China would access that industry and dual use. They can't like dual use produce military drone swarms, so it doesn't solve. They say ILAW, the app is domestic, but this takes out their argument about treaty fill-in because it's the reason why China would never follow the treaty. They say there are sub barriers for sensing A. It does not take out our whole argument because it also disrupts things like A2AD that enable drone swarms but the card does not assume new technologies from drone swarms, and it was new technology from drone swarms. Hypersonic, we're not going for the hypersonic stuff. The Zhang card will concede the Elton die. We're not going for the Schifference and evidence. This card does not assume new technologies from laws, which is even if this is like broadly true with past technologies or like limited Chinese rise, new technologies and make the peaceful transition a conflict, which is offense for us. They say laws de-escalate, other countries solve, but this also doesn't answer the thesis in umbrella because like other countries solve because it requires multiple countries to have laws in order to create the de-escalation. In fact, we're only China. Another regulation, counterplan, permutation do both. It chills the net benefit because because having limited residual human control would solve the defenses for hacking. Second is permutation. The counterplan, residual human control is non-autonomous because it would limit targeting, but it can't solve perception. Even laws are harder to use perception that China has capabilities enough to cause arms racing. Doesn't solve miscalculate subs because our evidence is about the presence of them. Third is hedge. Any Chinese capability destroys security guarantees because smaller countries with bandwagon ideologically align themselves. B, it causes great power workers the US would be afraid and use hard power, assumes zero solvency is taken care of by their own evidence about how China would not follow I law. So there's no follow on. Rogue human attacks are still inevitable. The speed of AI and enabled weapons, delegation of human command and control creates a certainty. Now conditionalities voting issue one is clash for incentivized reading many short advocacies and going for the least cover, which moves one a response and prevents going in depth on their position nuances. Outweighs because outright education multiple rounds solve their impacts, but clash only occurs in our run. Two is that dis themselves they can kick if we permit a lot of sufficient negative flexibility while preserving one year strategic decision making. Negative argument of responsibility on the dis case outweighs the perception of capabilities alone cause extinction, which is faster than the development of their specific defense. Two is it's not autonomous. Automation is distinct, proven by how Horowitz goes aft because he's like we should ban or we should use these in as part of we should use automation as part of defense. Also, it's not lethal. Mole 18 lethal autonomous weapon systems or weapon systems that are capable of lethally engaging human targets in a war without direct human supervision. We'll concede the all causes, but the Wyatt recutting says nothing. It never says cyber defense that applies to lethal. Time frame takes out their offense because hackers don't use laws. They have no reason for why getting it first matters, but it equally applies the link of the dissent news at the risk of cyber attacks. Lewis 18, the damaging attacks requires resource and engineering knowledge will be beyond the capabilities of non-state actor. Reality of cyber attack greatly differs from our fears. Our opponents' goals are not to carry out another cyber 9/11 Russians want to confusion, not physical damage. Run with crazy cyber actions against being our entertainment companies. Their goals political coercion, not destruction. More hard at disruption. Go to the she dissent. What China has already actually their evidence proves China's supported a ban, which is a reason for why it thumps their offense. No nickel war. That's Friedman 3.5. The 19. The Hanoi and deadlock media label talks of failure, but ending negotiation is a routine when a war with no code is not a good option for the U.S. There's danger of artillery fire close to Seoul, the uncertainty of location with North Korea's nuclear weapons in the U.S. aversion to another war. No knows one thing that would trigger preemptive strike is to develop weapons or credit develop weapons.
Develop weapons. Okay, I'll just start prep and I'll find that line.
It's like towards the end.
Wait, why can't I? Oh, there we go. All right, prep. Did you read the Moynihan card on the counterplan?
No, I did not.
Order is the cyber attacks dissad, the counterplan, the Xi legitimacy dissad, the case. No new cards.
Wait, sorry, can I get that again?
The cyber attacks dissad, the counterplan, CCP legitimacy dissad, the case.
Is there a doc?
No.
All right, I'm good.
You said cyber counterplan C case.
Yep.
Cool.
Concede no link to the cyber attacks dissad. The counterplan is the best option to resolve all of the affirmatives impacts. 1 is technical limits, including shut-off capabilities that prevents escalation. 2 is it requires an onboard camera. 3 is it restricts deployment in civilian areas. 4, it requires training of all commanders to ensure compliance with the legitimate use. I'm kicking out of the residual human control plank, which answers permutation to the counterplan. He didn't ask if I could kick planks, which means this is completely legitimate. It doesn't sort of amplify any of their condo offense because it wasn't extrapolated as such in the 1AR. This solves, it builds in protections that prevent systems from speeding up decision making and causing accidents or miscalculated conflict. The counterplan requires a fail-safe shut-off capability to be built in. Also, the counterplan results in a ban in the long term after countries have agreed to restrictions and restraints on development. It provides a platform for negotiations on a ban later on for follow-on evidence from the 1NC. Lewis is explicit. The counterplan also builds the best buy-in and ensures say yes prefer our evidence. It is comparative to the counterplan and the plan. It says countries like Russia, China, and the US will never say yes to a complete ban. They're too obsessed with the military benefits of laws. They will just ignore a potential ban or cheat the ban, but they would sign up for the counterplan in order to save face, which proves that we don't link to any of our circumvention arguments, and circumvention is a net benefit to the counterplan if we win no perms. Now, the line by line, I already kicked out of the residual control, which answers permutation to the counterplan. Permutation do both is incoherent. You can't regulate and ban lethal autonomous weapons at the same time. If you can, vote negative on presumption because the affirmative doesn't get rid of laws. Anyways, but it also doesn't make it also doesn't make very much sense because even under the world where China somehow managed to pass a ban and still regulate all of laws, it would still link to all of our perception-based offense on the Xi legitimacy decided because everyone in the CCP would perceive China had just banned laws, which obviously still links. The arms race argument was not extended in the 1AR. They shouldn't get offense off of just saying the counterplan doesn't resolve arms racing, but independently it does, which was all of the sort of resolves instability and escalation arguments explained above. They say it doesn't solve subs. This 1AR was incredibly light on this. It just says because it's about the presence of UAVs that will be explained on the case, but also there's just not enough warrants in the 1AR as to why the counterplan is unable to resolve this. We build in sort of safety mechanisms that increase the trust and reliability of laws in the first place, which means that people wouldn't be perceptibly afraid of them and they wouldn't see that subs are sort of endangered by them. They say security guarantees and US hard power, none of those were extended in the 1AR, so they shouldn't get access to them. They say no follow-on because China doesn't follow ILAW. I'll explain this argument here. Yes, we agree China doesn't follow ILAW bans, except our argument is they would follow international law regulations, which is the explicit sort of distinction that our solvency evidence makes. The only reason they didn't follow ILAW in the past was because it was a ban, which is the sort of argument that was made above. The condo shell. Neg gets 1 condo sells all their offense, puts a hard cap on the number of counterplans the 1AR has to answer, which self-skew and clash. 1 is logic. Proving a counterplan is bad doesn't prove the plan is good. A logical policymaker can always choose not to act. Logic outweighs it's the basis of all rational arguments. 2, neg flex, we're inherently reactionary. We need in-round flexibility to test the plan and have a fighting chance. If they had phenomenal answers to the counterplan, debate would be over after the 1AR, which is educationally bankrupt. Neg flex outweighs that fairness because affirming is easier. They get right to choose case area. Plan wording and infinite prep 3 is real world key to portable skills. They look at a lot of policies. There were 40 proposed sanctions against the USSR. 4 looked at 5 policies for Angola. 4, the 1AR should be hard turning point in the debate. Conditionality forces in-round strategic thinking, which removes coaching from the equation. The F doesn't have to contradict themselves or undercover. They need to make tough choices. 5, key to research unidimensional 1 and C's discourse. The neg from prepping multiple strategies against a case. Research outweighs its only portable skill we take into the real world. Our defense. 1, we debate in both worlds. 2, no unique abuse of the affirmative. If we kick the counterplan, the entire AC becomes offense. 2, straight turns to check. They can stick us with the net benefit. 3, perms check. They get functionally infinite condo advocacy on every flow. 4, the squo is inherently conditional. We can say no warming and warming good plus argument infinite number of status quo policy solve warming. No new two-way arguments hold the line. The clash argument. 1, non-unique. We always go for the least covered argument. Their offense is a function of the structure of debate, not conditionality. 2, they say it relies on multiple advocacies. We only read 1 advocacy, which means our interp solves 3 clashes inevitable. This argument is ridiculous. People always find points to contest, which is proven by the fact that you had solvency deficits. Dispel doesn't solve the neg. Will always pick arbitrary and unfair bright lines, which makes you much worse because the F can't read their best answers. Also means Dispel collapses down to condo and multiple rounds. Doesn't solve it. Doesn't matter if we get neg flex, but between rounds we need it in each round for it to matter and give us a fighting chance, which also applies for the rest of our offense. Also, if they win the perm, judge kick the counterplans a logical extension of a condo. She does that. The sheet is that always in terms of case zero contestation of the internal link means I shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, but the F collapses CCP legitimacy because they said laws are a crucial part of the military regime, which means that it would inevitably go nuclear as the CCP legitimacy declines. It causes instability in the Chinese political system, which means they can no longer make security guarantees to countries like South Korea, which causes escalation between China and North Korea. This uniquely goes nuclear and outweighs the affirmative. It happens immediately because it's a question of perception, not about development of lethal autonomous weapons. They've conceded from the cyber said that lethal autonomous weapons development by states and integration into their actual systems takes a really, really long time. It takes literal years because they have to go through a bunch of bureaucracy stuff. But the sheet is that is triggered immediately because it's a question of how the CCP is perceived by its own people. And as soon as they announce a ban, it would get triggered. They say it already. They already supported a ban. This is just not warranted. They haven't read any evidence. None of the 1NC evidence nor 1AR evidence substantiates the fact that China has already supported a ban. Our ILAW evidence actually does say, our ILAW circumvention argument on the case does say that they have supported a ban, except that they immediately retracted it and said that it doesn't include things like development, etc., which the affirmative obviously is not an example of. Plus, this is only mitigatory defense at best. Given the magnitude of the dissent, you should just vote on it. It outweighs the case because there's just not enough time on it spent on the 1AR. They also say no-code war. This is about U.S. no-code war, not China no-code war, and it doesn't matter if the risk is low because it's still a humongous impact that the affirmative hasn't gotten any specific game on. Now the case. Extend the circumvention evidence. One is our first Kenya card says that they will exploit legal loopholes. It's been proven in UN talks because they want to have strategic ambiguity over the other states. That's why they backtracked their initial statement from 2013 when they said they wanted to ban 2 or Mohanty cards as China softened its position, refused to be at a disadvantage with the US, which is magnified by the plan since they only ban Chinese laws, which gives China more of an incentive to circumvent. And remember, the 1NC has card 0 on this. We have quality evidence about Chinese circumvention. Hold the line on durable fiat. We have read absolutely fuego cards about Chinese circumvention. These substantive warrants should outweigh their bloody defense of durable fiat. 1, durable fiat does not mean perfect enforcement. They have not given you an interval what durable fiat includes and excludes, but we did in the 1NC, which is why you should air neg. Yes, the plan passed and it does get rolled back tomorrow, but that doesn't mean they get to wish away problems with verification, cheating, loopholes, etc. 2, before you consider voting AF on, oh no, this would make it hard to be AF. Remember, they chose to read an AF without any cards about enforcement or normal means. They could have read cards about the ban being enforcement. We all know those cards do exist somewhere, but they haven't, and they can't have their cake and eat it. 2, 3, their interpretation of durable fiat is unfair because it artificially inflates AF solvency and allows them to wish away substantive case debates, gives them huge advantages against counterplans and case terms because they can just assert durable fiat. But remember, the counterplan doesn't link to any of our circumvention arguments because it makes comparative arguments about why people would be willing to accept regulations.
Okay, I have, was it 35? I didn't write it down.
25, I think.
25?
Wait, actually, yeah, I think 25.
Okay. Okay, it'll go the case, then the counterplan, then the dissed. Is everyone good? Cool. Fully autonomous development of full autonomous weapons by China causes a power war between the U.S. and China, which goes nuclear. They've dropped our wide evidence. We explained it in response to Schifrinson evidence and on the counterplan and gave you a full scenario for how that would escalate because the development and the perception of lethal autonomous weapons ultimately undermines makes the current peaceful dynamic between China and the U.S. become far worse and far more destabilizing, which is a reason why it causes China war. They've conceded that China war goes nuclear. Which means if we win any risk of that, it structurally outweighs the dissent, given that there's a massive solvency deficit. They have not explained their way out of now the circumvention stuff. They ultimately durable fiat will win us this debate because they haven't answered our argument well enough. Durable fiat means that we will always lose because it's functioning in the context of domestic topics where we can read a policy and they can just say they can read our uniqueness evidence back at us. Obviously, China has not rolled back it. That's why all of these great cards about how China does not want to end laws exist in the first place, which is a reason why it kills Afghan. They have conceded that Afghan structurally outweighs their offense because the ultimately, because the NEC has generics like critiques, different reform counterplans, perception arguments, but the AF doesn't have any of that. So you should structurally err with AF grounds, which answers their only argument for durable fiat. They did not really meaningfully extend any offense here. They just said no. They say no in terms of durable fiat. It's pretty clear that it's limited to things like domestic stuff, which is why it doesn't make sense if they read this like a rollback argument on the Trump FJG topic. They say that it's not hard to. They say that they read no enforcement cards. That is distinct because we shouldn't have to when it's just a question of domestic enforcement in the first place. They say it kills absolvency. That was answered above. It answers all of the ambiguity and UN talks because it means that would not apply in a domestic context, but it does take out their only like real counterplan solves argument, which is this follow-on argument because they're evidently because it's a reason why China never wants to maintain those capabilities through ambiguity. The counterplan proper, the frame for the no follow-on stuff is that they don't get to fiat follow follow-on, which is the reason why China would not fiat it. That they have way too overhyped this like treaty follow-on argument is super generic, does not apply specifically in the context of China, does not reckon with any of their ambiguity arguments, which means it takes out the counterplan but not the affirmative. They say that it makes that that it creates legitimate use, that does not solve hedge because it does not solve the escalatory dynamics between America, between the U.S. and China. They also just said they did not read it, which means they have explicitly conceded this argument. Now the she just said they say perception argument first is that we access the perception argument because it's about how they perceive the escalation dynamic between the U.S. and China. Second is that the time frame stuff is kind of that means we access time frame, but the hedge stuff is irrelevant if we just win this impact defense. Their evidence is terrible. It just says that there would be a nuclear war between NOCO and SOCO. Obviously, that requires the U.S. to get involved. They have conceded evidence that that U.S. and SOCO don't want to get involved. It's simply media hype in the first place, which means it is specific because that is how escalation would work. They did not explain the scenario for escalation at all, which is a reason to err on impact.
Good debate.
Good debate.
Is Tej back? No. Okay, that's my bad. We have a decision, but Tej had to run and do something, and I told him it would be okay. So I'm just gonna wait a second for him to return. I'm gonna give him a call.
I'm back.
Okay. Well, congratulations to both debaters for reaching it to the semifinals of the TOC. This was a really, really excellent debate, and it was extremely close, and both of you should be very proud of yourselves for a job well done. The decision is a 2-1 for the negative. So I sat, before I start, I just want to say, Akshay, congratulations on a really excellent career. It's no surprise to me that you reached SEMS, and I've always really enjoyed watching you debate and even debating you. And I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you stick around. So ultimately, I decided that the AF gets to fiat the enforcement of their plan, and that the solvency deficit to the counterplan outweighed the net benefit. I think that the AF wins that the counterplan can't solve escalation because mere possession of AWS undermines US-China relations and causes conflict. And I think the risk of that conflict outweighs the disside, because I don't think that the US will go to war with North Korea, which means I don't think there's a risk that that conflict goes nuclear. The durable fiat debate, I think that the NEG's interpretation of durable fiat makes being AF too difficult. It allows the NEG to read the AF's uniqueness back to them and argue that this means that the plan won't get enforced. I debated for a long time about whether reading a piece of enforcement evidence would solve this, because I think that is a compelling argument, but ultimately I'm compelled by the 1AR and 2AR that says that on domestic issues, this doesn't make sense because I don't know what kind of enforcement evidence would resolve the fact that China doesn't want LAWs. I think that the 1AR and 2AR explanation of this argument was a little unclear. It took me a while to realize what you meant when you were calling it domestic issues, but I think it means that like we can't rely on the UN to enforce it if it's just China doing the plan. So I think that outweighs the negatives arguments about durable fiat being important to good case debate in impact terms because the app's making an argument or important to good case debate and inflating app solvency because the neg still has generics. So I don't think the 2NR ever explains why durable fiat is necessary to being negative in the same way that the app is explaining why it's necessary to being affirmative. It seems like the negatives arguments are just this would make debate better, which I think is outweighed by their argument. So I think the app gets their case. I think that the app wins the solvency deficit about escalation. I do think that the solvency deficit is small, but I don't think that the 2NR really answers this argument that any AWS capabilities means US and China will escalate. I don't think that the 2NR really explains follow on that well. So I don't think that the counterplan gets to results in a ban. And I think that, yeah, because it doesn't fiat it, then I don't think it will result in a ban for China because of the same warrants that the app gives for why China wouldn't do the plan absent durable fiat. So the solvency deficit is small, but I think that the case definitely outweighs the disad because of this impact defense that the 1AR reads that the US is not interested in getting in a conflict with North Korea. The 2NR says that this is about US-North Korea war. I think that's true, but I think that the 2AR is correct to point out that US involvement in that conflict is the only way that that conflict goes nuclear. So I'm not sure how that conflict escalates if the US doesn't get involved, and I think that their evidence means that it doesn't get involved. So that's my decision. Happy to answer any questions.
Good. I can go next. Before I do, obviously, congratulations, TOC semis, obviously a very large achievement. I've judged both of you like a number of times this season. I also debated both of you at least once each. And y'all are both like quite good. So that said, the decision. So I started on the case page because circumvention ended up being relevant to most of my decision. I end up thinking that the F does get durable fiat. However, I think that the 2NR is right that the interpretation of durable fiat is something that is up for debate. And I interpreted durable fiat as a ban is passed and doesn't get rolled back. But like within the bill of the ban, things like lethal autonomous weapons or so are defined. And I think that the ban that is passed has the enforcement mechanism or has an enforcement mechanism that has issues per the 1NC Kanye evidence that the 2NR extends. It has a line in it that says, the Chinese delegation articulated an intention to ban the use of fully autonomous laws. However, the definition the Chinese delegation provided was convoluted enough to exclude the types of weapons the PLA are developing, which leads me to think that even if the CCP or like PLA or whatever passes a laws ban that does not get rolled back, the ban that is passed will allow China to continue deploying lethal autonomous weapons, essentially in spirit. This means case solvency becomes a bit of an issue. Counterplan page, I think the 2NR is winning that regulation is more likely to be legitimate and complied with than a full ban, which at this point, after I evaluate the case page, is essentially a facade, which I get from the second piece of Lewis evidence on the counterplan. That means that circumvention is probably a net benefit to the counterplan, even if they aren't winning spill up, or if the ban that occurs as a result of spill up has circumvention issues. The spill up stuff, obviously the 2AR is like new here. I don't think the 1AR really had much here. But the stuff that the 2AR does say is just like takes out counterplan follow-on because either like China circumvents, which I just addressed, or treaty follow-on, which is generic. But I don't think that the EV that's on the counterplan is generic. It's like pretty explicit, like the last card, about how soft law norms like nation-specific codes of conduct can turn into hard law treaties, and that it's easier to create a ban based on existing regulations. It's obviously in the context of fully autonomous laws, the article is like titled "The Case for Regulating Fully Autonomous Weapons," and it talks about fully autonomous weapons like in that part of the EV. The hedge solvency deficit. The issues here, like A, the case can't solve because China essentially turns the ban into a facade, and the U.S. Is, I guess, behind China. And B, the regulations solve because either there's a spill-up ban, which is less likely to have holes poked in it, or at least the regulations leveled the U.S.-China lethal autonomous weapons playing field with regulations. At this point, that's probably sufficient to vote negative with the circumvention net benefit because the 2AR was largely just defense to the disad. I guess I'll talk about the disad real quick. The impact of that the 1AR reads is A, about the US striking North Korea or an unprovoked US strike being unlikely, and B, doesn't really account for China being involved in the war. And obviously a US-China war is more likely. Akshay said that on the case page. I think the neg impact of says that if China, however, currently is deterring NOCO from invading SOCO, post-plan, it provokes the US and gets China involved, because if the CCP loses legitimacy, North Korea decides to invade South Korea, which would be a provocation to the US because of alliances. I guess worst case, I don't think NOCO invades SOCO because the 2AR made some arguments about escalation dynamics, but that's sort of just impact D. The counterplan still solves the case, but the plan gets circumvented. Yeah.
Awesome. So first of all, I just want to say that it was a real pleasure to watch this debate. I want to say congratulations to Akshay on just a really incredible career. You have always been an incredible debater and been regarded as a formidable opponent for many, many years now. And I look forward to working with you and continuing to see you around. So the crux of my RFD is I think that the counterplan solves the case and avoids the risk of this GDSAD, which outweighs on time frame because the perception of Chinese weakness causes SOCO-NOCO war and draw-in, but miscalc doesn't happen for a long time. The counterplan. So I think that the counterplan solves the case. Regulating the use of LAWs by restricting deployment and ensuring training mitigates the risk of US-China conflict. I think there's two reasons for this. First, I think there's a lower risk of escalation because China won't strike high density areas. And two, it seems to decrease the risk of Chinese first strike, which is, I understand, is the app advantage. This perception solvency deficit, or just like, yeah, the perception of AWS solvency deficit. I think that the fact that your scenarios about first strike and miscalculation are both things that the counterplan can resolve by regulating Chinese use of LAW. So even if the US were to fight first strike, I don't think that there's a large escalation of conflict and conflict stays limited. I don't think that 1AR, 2AR explanation warrants that perceptions of development alone is enough to cause your scenario. And I read the wide evidence. And once again, I think that even if some production of AWS is somewhat conflict driven, the regulation on deployment of those weapons means that the US isn't interested in intervening. Now, the DISAP, the impact debate. This is, along with the circumvention debate, the part of the debate where I have more pause. So I think that Chinese economy and military superiority collapses China and correspondingly North Korea and North Korea's economy. That causes a conventional war between North Korea and South Korea, and other members of the international order are forced to be drawn in as a result of the escalation of that conflict. So the 1AR evidence says that a US war with North Korea isn't a good option for them, but the way that I read this evidence, and I hate to do that, but I think as per 2NR and 2AR explanation, I want to, just because there's so much references to the evidence, is that the fact that the US doesn't just want to be involved in just like a random sort of they strike first war with North Korea, but I don't think that this is the case. I think that 1NC evidence and 2NR explanation warrant that because of just how much international correspondence is involved in this conflict, the US has really no chance to be drawn in, even if they don't normally want to. The case debate, so the circumvention debate, I agree with both Danielle and Tej in some ways. I think that it's the way that I understand durable fiat is that the ban is passed and doesn't get rolled back, which makes it confusing for me to understand how the 1AR is explaining durable fiat. I also don't really understand the domestic stuff in the same way that Danielle does. So the 2AR says that reading circumvention evidence allows the negative to just read the uniqueness evidence back at them, but I don't think that this is the case because I think enforcement evidence and normal means solves this as per the 2NR, even if China doesn't want them right now, which I think also answers the argument about off ground. So I think that there's some risk that China circumvents a ban, which decreases the AF impact. That's it. Does anyone have any questions?
No questions. Andrew, thank you for a great debate. Really enjoyed our debates throughout the years. Good luck in finals, and thank you everyone for judging.
Great debate.
Yeah. Amazing
Excellent
job, you all.
Congrats again. Good luck in finals. We left. Okay.